This is episode 2 of How to Use Your Bible. And as you guys know by the illustration right here, we're on the ring finger now. So this is going to be reading the Bible. I pulled one of the verses from the ring finger, which is going to be Revelations chapter 1, verse 3. Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of the prophecy, and blessed are those who hear it and take heart what is written in it, because the time is near. And one thing that really stuck out to me is Luke chapter 4, verse 17. And I'll get more into that later, but I want to read it just so you guys have some context and remember this. He came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. As usual, he entered the synagogue, and the Sabbath day stood up to read. And then we see back in the Old Testament, this is all just some verses pulled out of the Bible to show how important it is to read, how many times the Bible declares us to read. Not only are we obligated to hear the Bible, but we're also obligated as Christians to read the Bible. And then Deuteronomy 17, verse 19, they read it from all the days of their life. So that means that every single day they read it. 1 Timothy 4, verse 13, until I come, give your attention to public reading, exhortation, and teaching. So it just shows how important the Bible is and how many the variety of things you can use it for. And then as we get into talking about reading, there's different genres that you get into. So there's the Bible has 3 genres in it, and it's really important to understand these genres because each of them have their own different meaning. And I know Cole talks a lot about this, about like Jonah in a big fat whale or whatever, like in the fish. Like, was that actually true? We don't know. We don't know if it was true or not. It was written as a narrative, which is one of the genres of the Bible, which is 43% of the Bible, actually. And a narrative is something that can be true. It can maybe not be true. Depends on how the story is written. Now, we don't know whether or not they were true or not, and that's up to only God, really. But I personally believe that Jonah truly was in that big fish, because we've seen it in today's time. We've seen people in fish go down the ocean and survive. If you don't believe me, look it up. I wanted to put the Webster dictionary meaning of each of these, narrative, poetry, and prose discourse. Prose discourse is an interesting one because I didn't really understand what that one is. We understand what poetry is. We understand what narrative is now. Prose discourse, they're ordinary language people use to use in speaking or writing without any metrical structure as seen in poetry or verse. So one thing is about prose discourse and poetry is that sometimes it's not to be taken literal. Like poetry, for example, if you're talking about something that has to do with a bird flying in the air, are you going to say, all right, well, that needs to apply to me? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on how it's written and who the audience is. That's why it's so important to understand what you're reading in the context of the Bible. I would like to show you guys a video. It's a really short 5-minute video that explains each of these 3 genres so you can actually understand what they mean and how they relate to the Bible.
The Bible is a collection of many books telling one unified story from beginning to end. But all those books were written in different literary styles. Yeah, think of it.
Oh, lovely. Sorry.
The Bible is a collection of many books telling one unified story from beginning to end. But all those books were written in different literary styles. Yeah, think of it like walking into a bookstore where every aisle has a different kind of literature. It's history or poetry or nonfiction. When you choose an aisle and pick up a book, you're going to have very different expectations, different things that you're looking for. Right, they're all literature, but they communicate in really different ways. Yes, and so the same thing is true for the Bible. If you don't pay attention to what style it's written in, you will miss out on the brilliance of each book. So what are the main types of literature in the Bible? Well, first and foremost is narrative that makes up a whopping 43% of the Bible. After that is poetry, which is 33% of the Bible. And then there's what you could call prose discourse, which makes up the remaining 24%. Nearly half the Bible is narrative. Yes, and this is no accident. Stories are the most universal form of human communication. Our brains are actually hardwired to take in information from stories. And stories are really enjoyable. Why is that? Well, stories train us to make sense of the seemingly random events that happen in life by taking those events and then putting them in a sequence. And then together you can start to see the meaning and purpose of it all. And what links this all together? Well, good stories always have a character who wants something. And then through these characters, an author can explore life's big questions, like who are we, or what's really important in life. And a good story always involves some kind of conflict, some challenge to overcome, just like in our own lives. And that forces us to think about our own challenges, why there's so much pain or disappointment in the world, and then what can we do about it? Stories usually end with some kind of resolution, giving us hope for our own souls. Since these are Bible stories, are the characters showing me how I should live? Yeah, that's not quite the point. Most Bible characters are deeply flawed. You should not be like them. But we are supposed to see ourselves in them, which helps us then see our lives and failures from a new perspective. And without even realizing it, these stories will start to mess with you and change how you see the world and other people and yourself. Now, there are different types of narrative in the Bible. Yeah, there's historical narrative, but also narrative parables, short biographical narratives like 4 Gospels. We'll look at all these in later videos. Okay, next up is poetry, which honestly, I don't read a lot of. Yeah, you're like most people. But 1 out of every 3 chapters in the Bible is poetry. Yeah, why so much poetry? Well, poems mainly speak through dense, creative language, linking together images to help us envision the world differently. Poems use lots of metaphor to evoke your emotions and your imagination. Lots of fancy language, but wouldn't it be easier just to tell me what I need to know? Well, think about it. In life, we tend to form mental ruts. We think in these familiar, well-worn paths. They're very hard to get out of through logic. What good poetry does is force you off the familiar path into new territory. And there's different types of poetry in the Bible. There's lots of types of songs or psalms. There's the reflective poetry and the wisdom books, and then the passionate resistance poetry of the prophets. Okay, the last big literary type is called prose discourse, and it makes up a quarter of the book. Yeah, these are speeches, letters, or essays. And the focus here is building a sequence of ideas or thoughts into one linear argument that requires a logical response. Like, hey, have you thought about this thing? You should also consider how it connects to this other thing. And if you do, then you will see that this is the result. And in light of that conclusion, therefore, you should probably stop doing that one thing so that this other thing will be the outcome. So you're persuading me with reason. Yeah, discourse forces you to think logically and consistently and then do something about it. Biblical discourse is found in law collections, in wisdom literature, and the letters written by the apostles. Okay, so each book of the Bible has one literary style. No, actually, most books have a primary literary style, like narrative, for example. But then embedded in the narrative, you'll come across poems or parables or collection of laws. Every biblical book is a unique combination of literary styles. And to read that book well, I need to be familiar with each literary type, how it works. Yeah, so you know what to pay attention to and what questions you should ask. But before we look at each type, there's one more unifying feature of biblical literature that's really important and really cool. And that's what we'll explore next.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for...
You get me out of here? Nope. Hold on. We're getting there. So,
the Bible.
With that being said, the Jewish, at the end there, it said like the Jewish literature, right? And the Jewish literature is so interesting to me. And that's where a lot of, I think, dare I say, a lot of pastors and preachers, they get a lot of things taken out of context because they don't understand Jewish literature. They don't understand that the original language is not English. It is actually Hebrew in the Old Testament, and in the New Testament it's Greek. But here's an example I wanted to show you guys, and it fits right in perfectly with our hand. If you guys remember, you have the thumb as meditate, right? So you meditate on hearing, you meditate on reading, you meditate on studying, and you meditate on memorization. And you meditate on reading. It teaches us, the Bible teaches us about meditating on reading. It talks about reading throughout the entire Bible, but especially in the word Haggai, which is used 24 times in the Bible. So obviously it's a pretty important word. And it's really taken out of the context. So I want to read, this is the English translation from the Hebrew, from Joshua chapter 1, verse 18. This book of instruction must not depart from your mouth. You are to meditate on it day and night. So keep that in mind, day and night. So obviously all throughout the day, all throughout the night, this should be every part of your life, so that you may carefully observe everything written in it. For then you will prosper and succeed in whatever you do. Now, the reason that this word is so important is because when people see the word meditate, what do you guys think of? Pondering, maybe? Thinking about something? Thinking about something in silence? Josh or whoever, I just thought about you, Josh. I don't know why you put it in my heart, but what do you think of when you hear the word meditate? When you hear you are to meditate on it day and night, what do you think of when you hear the word meditate in English when it refers to meditating on the Bible? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, what I think about it, it's more yes, you're thinking about it, you're definitely pondering about it, but to seriously meditate it, I mean, it's like almost deeper than that. Like you want it to be a part of you, essentially. It's
Yeah.
not. It's like you want it's like an extension of your hand, like your hand. There you go. But it's like an extension of your hand. It's like you're focusing so much on it, you are becoming what you're reading, essentially.
Yeah, that's well said. And that's what the universal view would be in English. If anyone said the word meditate, you think, all right, it needs to be a part of you, become you, right? Well, how does it become you? That's perfectly said. Well, I mean, that was you could I couldn't say that well, but Haggai, it says it even better. The word in Hebrew says it even better than what we could say it. That's why I asked. I kind of set you up, Josh. I apologize. Us Americans, us in English, we don't understand what it means to meditate, what God means to meditate. We see the word, so this is what it means. It means to ponder, but also to murmur and even roar or growl. Which, if you make up what that's trying to say, he's saying that I speak it day and night, which makes sense why the Bible talks so much about reading out loud and talking out loud. So here are some examples in the Old Testament of this word in Hebrew being used. I chirp, this is Isaiah. I chirp, I swallow like or a crane. I moan like a dove. And that's the same word for meditate. Psalm 77, I will reflect. Okay, that makes sense. That's kind of what Josh is saying. That's English, right? That makes more sense towards English. But look at Psalms 71. Therefore, my tongue will utter your righteousness all day long. That is not what Americans have in mind when they hear the word meditate. Psalm 63, this is a good one right here. When I think of you as I lay down on my bed, I meditate on you during the night watches. And so I think of that, well, he already said he was thinking. Isn't that kind of the same thing in meditating? But not to the Hebrews. Not to the Hebrews. To the Hebrew language, it means I think about you and I speak you out loud. So how much would we change if every night before we went to bed, we said John 3:16, 17 through 18. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. But you paused. What does that mean? What did I just say? All right. I know what that means. John, and then, you can even do the Lord's Prayer. You can do Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. What does that mean? Okay, he's holy. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, right? What does that mean? His will be done in my life. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name, the kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. What does that mean? See what I'm saying? That's true meditation. You're saying it out loud almost from a memorization standpoint that you don't even realize what you're saying. That you can just say it without even thinking. It just comes off your tongue. And then you're thinking about what you're actually saying, and it helps you understand these things so well. And I want to keep reading Psalms 1. He meditates on it day and night. Isaiah 59. We all growl like bears and moan sadly like doves. You can see it. It's meditation is speaking out. And obviously, the New Testament isn't written in Hebrew, so it doesn't use this word. But it's still the people who wrote the New Testament, like Paul, they know Hebrew and they know what this word means. They know how much it is valued to read something out loud. So the word isn't used in Greek in the New Testament, but the concept is still there. As we can see Luke, like I said in the first part, chapter 4, verse 17. He Jesus regularly, almost like it was tradition for him. So he did this every single Sunday, read literature, read the Bible out loud in front of a crowd. Revelations 1, verse 3. Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of his prophecy, and blessed are those who hear it and take it to the heart what is written in it, because the time is near. I think about First Timothy. I thought of this while I was doing this PowerPoint. First Timothy chapter 4, verse 13. Paul says to Timothy, Paul's kind of a mentor to Timothy. Timothy's like, what do I need to do? He's like, devote yourself to public reading of Scripture, to preaching and teaching. So what Paul is saying is, You know that preaching, all you do on the street and everything? You should read the scripture aloud also. Not just preach on it and teach people what it means, but say it aloud. And there's so much power in that. And maybe, maybe on here in human form, I'll never understand that. Maybe I'll never understand why there's so much power in that. But I feel it. That's for sure. Every time I lay it, before I lay it down in bed at night, I recite the verses that I'm memorizing. And every month or so, I add another verse. So we do Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the thoughts I have for you, declares the Lord. Thoughts to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future. Now, what did that mean, what I just said? And then you start to dive into that. First Samuel, second chapter, verses 1 through 2. My horn is exalted in the Lord. I rejoice in his. I smile at my enemies. I smile at my enemies because I rejoice in his salvation. What? What did I just say? You see, like that's what true meditation is. Memorizing it, have it in your heart, written on your heart, and then realize what you're saying. And it makes so much sense as to it's almost like a tutorial of how to do what Josh was saying, of how to become the Bible, of how to become what is written in the text. I want to get into when we were talking about meditation, meditating on the Bible. I also want to talk about why we can't just read it. I want, read the Bible for yourself, absolutely, but also study it. Also get into what does it mean? What does this context mean? What does this language mean? Like, for example, we just dug into the word Hagar. What does that mean? Or Haggai. We dug into that word. Now we know the original language and what it meant. We know the culture of it. Your theology deepens. You understand things like salvation, grace, the Trinity that isn't directly mentioned in the Bible, but if you read it, you start to see how this comes to life. For example, in Hebrew, if you look at the word in Greek, if you look at the word in John chapter 1, it means the word. So I'm gonna recite to you John chapter 1 verse 1. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now that doesn't really make any sense to you if you're thinking, well, was the Bible in the beginning? The Word means Jesus. So let me say it back to you. We'll replace Jesus with the word Word. In the beginning was Jesus. Jesus was with God, and Jesus was God. So you read it like that, you're like, oh, that makes so much more sense. I see where the language is coming from. I understand the Trinity. I understand Jesus was God. Your theology starts to develop. Cross references. You engage in commentaries. I have a stack of commentaries, just a few right here. If any of you guys are curious about these, please let me know. You can rent these, take these. You don't even have to pay me some money. No, I'm just kidding. You're like, take them, man. If you guys need any of these, if you're like, hey, Kip, I'm going through John. I'm going through 1, 2, 3, first, second, and third John. Can I borrow that commentary? Yeah, man, take it. I mean, these aren't just mine. These are your guys's. And then I have tons of books over here. If you guys want any literature on deepen your understanding of the Bible. Avoiding misinterpretations. Like I said before, when people talk about what does the word meditate mean? Sorry, Josh, I think you misinterpreted. And with all due respect, I would have too. But if I didn't dive deeper, but that's a perfect example of misinterpretation. Did he get it right? Yeah, he did. But could he have gotten it even deeper? Could he have understood what it meant even deeper? Yeah, absolutely. Formation of coherent biblical worldview. That's a great one. You understand the Bible as a whole. You understand Genesis all the way to Revelations. You understand what Cole sent me a video the other day that a guy was like, the climax is always Adam taking the apple off the tree and then Jesus. But really the climax should be Moses going on Mount Sinai and then Jesus. Like, no, not many people would get that unless you studied the word in a way that you understood the whole picture. You're like, oh, I see what's going on. For example, like Abraham. Abraham makes a covenant with God, and he goes, God, I love you so much that I'm gonna separate these animals, and he separates like sheep, birds, cattle. He separates them in half and puts half of the animal over here and half of the animal over here, and makes a blood covenant with God. And what he's saying is, God, if I break this covenant, let me be the cattle. Let me be the bird that was split in half. God, if I break this covenant with you, do this to me, God. This is how serious I'm taking this. And you go, well, how does that make any sense? Oh, wait, Jesus was split between two thieves. Oh, wait, Jesus' blood was the new covenant. Oh, wait, with Jesus' blood, we can't break the covenant with God. Now Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice. We didn't have to sacrifice any more lambs. We don't have to sacrifice any more cattle. We don't have to sacrifice any more blood offerings because Jesus was the Holy One. Jesus was the one sacrifice because he lived a sinless life. He was worthy of it. So you start to put the Bible all together, like, oh, wow, this is all making much more sense. And then once you understand the Bible, I mean, you guys don't give yourself enough credit. You understand the Bible more than you think you do. And once you see it as a whole, you start to pick apart little pieces. You go here and there, and you're like, oh, I can see how this kind of wraps all together in this. But I would really encourage you not just to read. Go into all of these. I missed, now I'm looking at it, I missed number 6. Just avoid number 6. You can go into all 8 of these. And you just study the Word of God. And that's why next week we're going to be talking about studying, which you can find where the sources is going to be in Acts chapter